If you have a bee problem or an infestation of some kind, you don't just get rid of one bee or just get rid of a few, you get rid of the hive, you get rid of the queen, right? Well, it's the same kind of thing when we're looking at estrogen. There is this enzyme, okay? It's called an aromatase enzyme, and it is what allows estrogen to ultimately become what it is. We convert other compounds into estrogen. So when we're looking at reducing estrogen within our body, we need to think about how do we reduce aromatase activity. Now, there are lots of different compounds that have this potential effect, especially when you start getting into the research world, things like that. But what are 5 or so natural ways that we can inhibit aromatase? Let's go ahead and dive into this because estrogen's an issue, but if we just reduce the estrogen, everything's gonna come right back. We need to get it right at the source. Let's dive in. First and foremost, estrogen isn't just a libido issue. It doesn't just have to do with sexual health. Okay, estrogen plays a tremendous role when it comes down to blood clots, when it comes down to various cancers, when it comes down to just lifestyle in general. So the first category of foods are gonna be things called xanthones, which sounds super weird and almost alien-like. But xanthones are powerful antioxidants that are within certain foods. In this particular case, we're focusing on things called mangosteens. Okay, these are components of something called mangosteen, which is like a tropical fruit. So you get this kind of in a lot of tropical fruits that have like white, fleshy, like meat inside. But we'll get into that in just a second. There's a study that was published in the Journal of Natural Products, took a look at 12 different xanthones and their effect on inhibiting aromatase, this estrogen conversion enzyme. It was pretty wild what they discovered. They found that 4 different xanthones coming from mangosteens had dose-dependent effects on aromatase, meaning the more that was taken in, the more it impacted aromatase activity. In other words, the more that was consumed, the more it inhibited estrogen in the first place. Now, this was going to be in cultured cells, but we still take what we can from it. Now, the problem is you can't eat that much tropical fruit. That would just be a ton in order to get the amount that actually had this effect. You can get mangosteen supplements, and you can also get one specifically called Garcinomangostina. Okay, that's one that's going to have a powerful effect. But there was another study as well. This study was published in the journal Molecular Sciences, and it found that xanthones, again from mangosteens, had an inhibitory effect when it came down to cancer cells. So basically, it was slowing down the proliferation of cancer cells when it was looking at colon cancer. Pretty interesting stuff. They also found that it triggered apoptosis in some of those colon cancer cells. Now, again, this is in cells, not necessarily directly in humans, but we have to understand the relationship between estrogen and some forms of cancer as well. So if we have potential anti-aromatase activity, then we can potentially slow the growth of some of those cells, at least in cultured cells. But that's all I can say on YouTube, really. Now let's move into the next one, which is going to be flavonoids. Now, flavonoids are talked about in a really broad kind of category. And the problem with flavonoids is they get thrown under the bus because everybody kind of markets them too much. But flavonoids are naturally occurring like antioxidants, anti-inflammatories, and in this case, anti-aromatase, compounds that are found in various like fruits and veggies. So yeah, you might have to consume a lot of them, but they're also heavily researched. There was a study that was published in the journal Steroid Biochemistry and Molecular Biology, took a look at 11 different flavonoids and its effect overall on aromatase activity. It's pretty interesting results with this one. They looked at how flavonoids compared to something called aminoglutathione, or AG, which is a pretty powerful pharmaceutical anti-aromatase. Okay? Now, what they did is they looked at energy kinetics, or enzyme kinetics rather, with this, and they looked at a score of what is called Ki. So in this particular case, a lower Ki score means that there is a higher inhibitory effect on aromatase. So you want a lower Ki score in this particular case. Okay, the pharmaceutical grade AG had a Ki of 2.4, just to give you reference. Pharmaceutical grade was a 2.4. Okay, when they did this study, they found that there were some flavonoids that were even lower than that. Alpha-naphtoflavone, which is technically a synthetic flavonoid, so we won't really count it as a natural one, but that particular one had a Ki of 0.2. That's a synthetic flavonoid, okay? But then there was a naturally occurring flavonoid called chrysin, and chrysin had a Ki of 2.4, equally matched with the pharmaceutical AG when it came down to anti-aromatase activity. Again, this is in cultured cells, but we take what we can get. All very promising stuff. And when you start hearing about, oh, well, where can I get chrysin from my diet? Then it becomes all the more illuminating and exciting. Okay, we're talking things like passion flower, we're talking things like geranium, we're talking things like honey, We're talking things like bee pollen. Okay, these are all rich in chrysin. Okay, so it's not like it's impossible to get. You can also take chrysin supplements as well, but in the essence of trying to get whole foods, it's always better. Okay, I did put a link down below for Thrive Market because they have a lot of different options when it comes down to honey and bee pollen and things like that. They're an online membership-based grocery store. Now, in no way, shape, or form am I trying to make it seem like the net impression of this video is to go buy bee pollen from Thrive Market, but I will say they do have a good selection there. And regardless of that, they're an online grocery store, so you can do all your shopping right there. And there's a link down below for 30% off your entire first grocery order. So I don't care if you go and order like $500 worth of food or $1,000 or $100, you can save 30% off your entire first grocery order, plus get a free gift worth $50 when you use the special link down below. So that special link down below is the one you have to use to get that discount. Now, Thrive makes it super easy. Then it all gets delivered to your doorstep in a day or two. Super easy and convenient. And you're never having to leave the house. It's that simple. So that link is down below in the description. Now, to put things into context as to like how this is working, when you're looking at flavonoids specifically, they will battle with compounds that would stimulate the receptor that would receive aromatase. So what that means is they basically go into battle and occupy receptors, or sometimes block receptors, or they even block what would normally stimulate a receptor. So you're stopping this aromatase from ever binding and doing what it's supposed to do. So it's legitimately having an anti-aromatase effect because it's blocking the aromatase enzyme from getting into its docking site, therefore slowing down the conversion overall. So this is occurring usually in pre-adipocytes, like pre-fat cells, which gets a little more complex, but still important to know. Which leads me into the next one, terpenoids. Now, terpenoids sound like another fancy gobbledygook Tom DeLauer term, but really, we see terpenes all the time. And in this particular case, if you look at things like myrrh and myrrh oil, now myrrh is a sap that comes from African trees, like these specific thorny trees. And then typically what they do to create myrrh oil is they steam distill it and you end up with a terpene, okay? Now in this case, pretty fascinating evidence coming out from an anti-aromatase standpoint. There was a study that was published in the journal Planta Medica that looked at 5 different terpenes that were in myrrh. And it found that 4 out of 5 of them had pretty powerful effects on what in this case is called HUVEC. So they're looking at specific endothelial cells from the umbilical region. So again, cultured cells. But they found that in this case, there was an anti-aromatase effect. Now, where do you get terpenes? Okay, you're gonna find them in all kinds of different foods. But just to name a few, you can get them from various teas, predominantly black teas, so consuming a lot of black tea is pretty good. Thyme is also very, very rich in it. If you can use a lot of thyme in your cooking, it can have a powerful effect, and even citrus. But I, in this case, would recommend using the peel. So lean towards the citrus peel, orange peel, lemon peel, lime peel, add it into your food, add it into your water, add it into your desserts. Just try to get it in so you get those flavonoids in. This next one is called Hispolon. Now, Hispolon is usually found in medicinal mushrooms, so it's a little bit less accessible, but it's something that I think we're going to start seeing a lot of research in the coming years. Now, there was a study that was published in the International Journal of Medicinal Mushrooms that found that Hispolon actually increased estradiol, which is estrogen, in vivo. So when you were looking at actual human models, okay? But then when you look at it in Western blot cultured cells, you see, oh, there's actually an inhibitory effect. So it's actually blocking aromatase activity. So we don't necessarily know what's going on here, but the reason I mention it is I always like to throw one into the mix that takes some more research, that we should be investigating more. Because in a cultured cell, we see it has a strong anti-aromatase effect. But in human models, we actually see an increase in estradiol. But it could be freeing up estradiol. Who knows? There's lots of different things going on. Now, this last one, I hope that you stuck around, is a very interesting one because it's one that we all get in a lot of, generally speaking, and that's curcumin, or we have a lot of access to, turmeric curcumin. The interesting thing is that curcumin is working along a different pathway outside of aromatase activity. Okay, it works upon reducing estrogen by having a powerful antioxidant effect. Check out this study. The Journal of Steroid Biochemistry and Molecular Biology took a look at the testes of male rats. I know it sounds kind of funny, okay, but what they did is they treated them with gallic acid, or they treated them with gallic acid alongside curcumin, or curcumin only. They found that the gallic acid ended up inhibiting spermogenesis, so it slowed down sperm production, sperm motility, and it had a negative impact on testosterone. Okay, they found that when that was combined with curcumin, the curcumin prevented that damage from occurring. It prevented those negative effects. Okay, now the curcumin only ended up having positive effects, and it ended up increasing overall steroid hormones like testosterone and things like that. Why is this occurring? Well, researchers are speculating, and they have to kind of look at the data here, but they think, okay, this has to do with the antioxidant effects of curcumin. So the gallic acids seem to impair the antioxidant defense of the body, and the curcumin seemed to stop that impairment. So it's working on an antioxidant pathway, which is very interesting. So curcumin seems to inhibit the enzymes that produce free radicals. So indirectly, curcumin was stopping the production of free radicals that would normally slow down all this positive stuff, right? Or we don't want that, right? So when you had gallic acid coming in and we had an increase in reactive oxygen species, curcumin seemed to prevent those enzymes from producing free radicals. And a lot of the positive impact when it came down to steroid hormones like testosterone had to do with the reduction in what's called lipid peroxidation, which is essentially oxidation that occurs within lipids, fats, right? So it's called lipid peroxidation. And fats are so integral for steroid hormones like testosterone and things like that, that when that was protected, the body was able to create those more effectively, seemingly, at least in rats, right? So just to recap, mangosteen, tropical fruits, okay? Things like that. Passion flower, honey, lots of manuka honey, things like that. Lots of bee pollen if you want a lower carb solution for that. Then of course we have tea, we have thyme, we have citrus, all in concentrated amounts whenever you can, okay? And then lastly, that curcumin, adding that into the mix. So as always, keep it locked in and I'll see you tomorrow.